Who would like to ask me a question, please? Gentlemen.
When you talk about manifestation, you said it will happen to the degree you believe in it. I think in the Joseph book, it was talking about manifesting an elephant and it doesn't happen because you don't really believe it.
Yes.
Is it purely your level or my level of belief, or is it perhaps there's 7 billion other people who know it can't be true? And
Yes,
you
you've
try to
got...
offset one against the other?
Well, that's a good point. In that, if you want to manifest something, don't tell anybody else. Let it be your own personal manifestation, apart from people that you can trust. And it is true that there is the weight of the world that disbelieves. But as it also says in the Joseph books, one person who believes and wields the light is equal to 1,000 who don't. Our belief in the light is stronger than the world's belief in the material. And so we have to be careful with manifestation, not to think, well, there might be people who don't believe this. We have to say, this is my belief, it is mine, I have linked with you, Father, that's it.
Yeah.
And then we get it. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you.
So can I ask?
Paul?
When you manifest, do you get what when you say about manifesting, do you get what your soul wants or your soul needs?
You get, well, that's the point of there perhaps being consequences when you manifest. You get what you want, you have whatever you want in the measure that you believe it to be there and with you. But as a result of manifesting, what you've manifested might be totally harmonious with your life path, or it might present you with challenges that you have to work out. In either case, you're learning and evolving.
So it could create more problems than it cures, in a word. So
It depends what it is, you know. If you want that elephant, you're going to have somewhere in your house to house it, and you're going to need a big bucket. Yeah, so you can have whatever you want, but you have to be not mindful, but aware that everything that we interact with has an effect on us, and we have an effect on it. And it may be that some of the things that we manifest are perfectly fine and easy for us, but some of the things we manifest come with a set of circumstances that will need to be worked through.
Is that when, like, somebody wins lottery and it causes them more problems and it ends up...
Well, that's a perfect example, isn't it? But it doesn't mean that everybody that wins the lottery is going to come across problems. There might be somebody who's perfectly able to manage that sum of money, and it helps them in certain ways that it wouldn't have done it had they not manifested it.
But what it doesn't it? It causes a lot of problems for people. So
It does, but each case has to be taken individually.
Yeah.
You know, whatever we manifest will take us along a short path or a slightly longer path. But
what you wish for.
maybe that's a bit too negative a view of it. We have to understand that we are creative beings. In our spiritual state, if we were in one of the spiritual, we're in a spiritual realm, but if we were in a higher vibrational spiritual realm, say I wanted a glass of water, I wouldn't reach for a glass of water, I'd just say, glass of water. There it is. And then I would put it back into the ether afterwards, and those molecules, those higher vibrational molecules, would be used to create something for somebody else. There's the greater problem of we, on this level, because of the effects of the fall, we can manifest and we don't realize we're doing it because we've lost that link. We don't realize that whatever we believe to be true, we create around ourselves. But we can't put away, as I just said with that glass of water, we've forgotten to do that on Earth.
Yeah.
So we've got layer after layer after layer of negative vibration, of destructive vibration, and we can't let it go back into the ether. We cling on to it, we don't realize that it's there, and as a result we repeat the same pattern over and over.
Hardens the illusion then.
It does. It does. As Joseph says, the fall, going back as far as he can go back, has occurred at least twice before. And every time it happens, it's more difficult to get us out of it. Because as you say, the layers have thickened. We become more and more material. As I think you can see at the moment, people become so material. And as I said in one of those false or made-up headlines, God doesn't exist. That's one of the imperatives of society today. There's no God. You don't go to a God, you go to us. We're God. Well, you are in a sense, but not in the sense that you mean, you know. So we've got to be extremely careful, and we've got to get things right, and we've got to get light into this world.
And I think sometimes with manifestations, you just sort of like do it once and let it go. Don't sort of have all the nuts and bolts details of how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen,
Yes.
and revisit it, remanifesting it today, just like let it go like a balloon into the sky, and then it'll come back, and often in a way that you didn't expect.
A friend of John's, during the Second World War, had his arm cut off in a Japanese concentration camp. And he stood in for a young doctor. They were going to do this to a young doctor, and he said, no, do it to me. He's of more use to humanity. That's the sort of man he was. Now, he believed in manifestation, and he kept saying to Joan, I'll get a new arm. She said, even with my faith, you're not going to grow a new arm, Ken. I'll get a new arm. And he kept believing this. Now, one day, there was a knock at his door, and a parcel arrived by mistake, destined for somebody else. And in it was a prosthetic arm. But again, the power of manifestation. No, it was pre. No, if it was Amazon, he'd have to send it back, wouldn't he? No, it was pre-Amazon days. Pre-Amazon, but such was his faith. He was still activating the same process, and he manifested an arm. You know, I mean, Joan herself was born with one leg shorter than the other, and her parents were told that she'd never walk again. And she tried all sorts of doctors, and they said, no, we can't do anything for her. She'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of her life. And there was a man in the village who was regarded as a quack. And in desperation, her parents went to this gentleman, and he came in to see Joan. And he said, repeat after me. God did not make funny legs. And she said, what? He said, never mind that. Repeat after me. God did not make funny legs. God did not make funny legs. I have pantomime legs. Pantomime legs. He said, look, if you will do this with me and you'll believe in it, I'll work with you. If you're not, if you don't believe in it, I'll go down and you'll never see me again. And she said, all right, I've tried everything else. Every day for, I've forgotten the number of years, because it's a number of years ago, it was either 10 or 20 years, he came twice a day. Here we go, Joan. God did not make funny legs. God, I have pantomime legs. At the end of that period, whether it was 10 or 20 years, both her legs were the same length. And she never did go into that wheelchair. Again, belief creates form. We're spirits. We are creative beings. We're angels. That's what we do. But here we do it for all the wrong reasons, and we do it negatively. We're still creating right now. The world is creating right now, but it believes in the negative side. You're getting older. You're going to be ill. You don't have enough. You're reliant on us. This person's wrong, that person's wrong. We need to fight this, we need to fight that. And that's what we're creating. We're still creating, but we don't realize that we can turn that around and create positively, create harmoniously, create divinely. And that's why the World Meditation Alliance is so important. In that we are given an instruction as to what the vibrations that we can bring into the world at any particular time are, and the effect that they're going to have on people. And one of the questions that comes up often is, why do you need the World Meditation Alliance? Why can't those vibrations simply arrive here? They can't arrive here because of what we've just been discussing. It's such a dense place that they have to be slightly lowered in frequency and then distributed by human spirits. And also, because we got ourselves into this mess, we, not they, have got to get ourselves out of this mess. And so the vibrations, the angelic intentions are made available to us, but it's up to us to then distribute them, to act as conduits for them, to say this is what the world needs at this time to change, to become more positive, more divine in nature as it was originally intended to be. And so off we go. It's over to you. And we send out that light.
Can I just ask that? When you said about asking again and again about the legs, the leg situation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Then, but on the other hand, you were saying that you ask once and let it go.
Yes, but
So what's the difference?
well, remember that Joan at that point, she came into spirituality through experience. So at that point in her life, she didn't know about manifestation. She didn't realize that she could just believe and it would happen. She went on a very lonely journey and a very frightening journey because Joan used to go into trance by herself. Now, whenever I went into trance, I had people around me that would make sure that I got back in one piece, or as, you know, as mentally able as I'm possible to get. But she would sit by herself. When her mother died, she decided that she would investigate life after death to see if there was anything there. And so she taught herself. She started to commune with spirits. But by the way, she'd seen spirits since she was a little girl, but didn't know in what context those spirits were visiting her. She saw the Persian gentleman when she was a little girl. And the Persian gentleman is not a guide of mine, but he's a principal mover and shaker in what happens with the Joseph communications. And he connected with Joan, and Joan connected with me, so that Joan could bring me to the point where I could see the members of the soul group and could do the work that we're doing today. So it was all set up over actually hundreds of years, because Joan and myself reincarnated several times in order to get to this point. We didn't know it, but the first time I saw her, I wandered into an open circle, and this lady was sitting across from me, and I thought, I know you, you're a nurse. I've never seen her before on this level in my life. And we got chatting, and I discovered that during World War II, she was a nurse. And she was tending wounded soldiers, and all the other nurses in her department had suffered from mental difficulties as a result of what they'd seen and what they'd had to deal with on a daily basis. Not Joan, she was the only one that survived mentally intact. But at that point, when that doctor or that specialist came into her life, she didn't realize any of this. She in later life, as we said earlier, she would say, I need this, God, it's done. I need the car, it's done. Because it was a path, and she learned. I didn't understand about manifestation earlier in my life. My life was a matter of my mind dictating to me in all circumstances what to do and making a mess of things. I only took control of my own life at the point at which I understood that there was communication with higher realms and that there was a purpose to the white light that could be brought through. So it's a matter of us step by step understanding spirituality. I don't know everything. At the end of a year, I look back and think, well, I didn't know what I know now at the beginning of the year. Spirituality and the evolution of a spiritual path is a constant. It's constantly unfolding. And you will understand one thing and think, that's wonderful. And then something else will come along and refine what you already know and be added to what you already know. And it's a matter of having an open mind and an open heart. We have so many souls here that are trapped within the confines of the physical mind. They can't countenance anything that is outside their experience to a certain point. Whereas with spirituality, you have to go to here and say, let me examine this. Let me consider this. Let me make my own mind up as a spirit about this. And then it keeps unfolding and unfolding and unfolding. But it will continue to unfold and unfold and unfold as we move through the spiritual spheres. And more about that this afternoon. Does that answer your question? That's why she couldn't instantly connect with that. Thank you.
Just on the point of illnesses, when you're talking about illnesses, is eating meat linked to that? Is eating animals linked to that? Because, you know, they say don't eat off the meat and it's bad for what they call it, but it's bad vibration-wise because the industry now, the food industry, is so cruel and so terrible what it does with animals.
I think it has to be a matter of personal conscience, but I also have to say that it's not just the meat industry.
No,
It's most of the food that you eat is a poison to you. I don't want to get political, but most of the food that you eat is a poison, and it's a poison on purpose. It's a poison because it's addictive, and it's a poison because if it puts you in the hands of certain members of the medical profession, not all by any means, but yes, pharmaceuticals, because you are looked at as a patient as a certain value within the period that you will be treated. Within the period you'll be treated. So it's a corruption, and that corruption goes back to the time of the fall, when we felt at the point of the fall that we didn't have enough power. I haven't got enough personal power, so I've got to take it from somebody else. And that you can see that that's coming to the surface again. And we were warned when we broke through the fall, which was, what, 15 years ago? Something like that?
It's 2012 when we published it.
2012. We didn't realize that the fall was a prophecy, because Joseph brought it gradually into the books. He said, I'm going to talk about the fall. And we thought, what's that? Sorry? It's an amazing book. I can say that because I didn't write it. But it is an amazing book, and it explains down to the smallest detail what went wrong, why it went wrong, and what we have to do to get out of this situation. One of my greatest sadnesses in life is that more people haven't taken up the fall. And I'm not talking about the people in this room, but I believe the reason that not more people have taken up that book is because of two words: personal responsibility. And that is the barrier that we find with a lot of readers. With many, many readers, there isn't that barrier. But with a lot of readers, there's that barrier of, I've got to do something. No, forget that. I've got to take responsibility for myself. Forget that. I can affect this world positively and help others. Forget that. And that's why we're in the mess. We'll never get out of it until we accept personal responsibility. So you can see the fall in all aspects of the world at the moment. And again, I've got to point to the World Meditation Alliance, because there has never been a time when there has been since the last fall, there has never been a time when there has been such a need for light, such a need for higher vibrations, such a need for a reconnection with spiritual consciousness. You know, most people, many souls go through each day, they'll never have a single spiritual thought. Not one. They go from life to death, birth to death, and they never think, what am I? Why am I here? Where is here? Is there anything else? How can you move through life without asking those questions and seeking answers? Not to go to the Joseph Communications, but to seek for yourself those answers and to open up possibilities. You know, we're on a ball of rock. It's spinning, and then it's spinning around a sun. And there are other balls of rock. And then we're part of a galaxy, and the galaxy is part of other galaxies. There's a universe. Joseph talks about universes, plural. And we're concerned about controlling people with drugs. Doesn't it put things into perspective?
Yeah, it's so very locked in and small.
It is locked in, yeah. And that is why the heart mind is so important, because we have to regularly, in order to open ourselves up spiritually, get literally out of our minds. Not out of this mind and into this mind, and start to connect with what we really are. Because as I put on Facebook a few days ago, there's too much of us to be poured into one physical frame. We've lived multiple times, we've had multiple experiences. And so there is the greater self, which is, I suppose, the equivalent spiritually of the cloud digitally. So all that we have been can't be contained by one little physical mind. But we have access to those experiences. We have access to those lives that we've lived and what we understand as a result of having lived them. And so it's not just a matter of connecting to the heart mind for a higher vibrational inspiration. It's a matter of going to the heart to connect with who we really are, to see what we need to do or don't do in all circumstances, and to rely on this. We can't rely on the material world. We can't. At this point, we can't rely on it for anything. It will tell us black is white and white is black, and it will shove it down our throats.
£500 for that information.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes, because we've replaced God with mammon. This is God. These notes are God. You should worship these notes. No, you shouldn't.
No.
It's God we should go to because we're part of God. And we've divorced ourselves from what we are. We have to get back to what we are, or this world will never change. Hence the WMA.
Michael, could you perhaps explain about the Persian gentleman and the soul group? There's people wonder whether the Persian gentleman comes through to other other people with psychic ability.
Yes.
And the second part, I was going to say, if you're prepared to open up on privy stuff that you and I have, could you just say about the sort of indication that we get from the other side about the effectiveness of the WMA?
Yes. Yeah. So the first part, the Persian gentleman. This sounds arrogant, and I don't mean it to be. And I always say, why is it us that's involved in this work? Why not? It has to be somebody, But the preparation for bringing through the Joseph information, the preparation for the World Meditation Alliance has taken hundreds of years. I incarnated with Joan, and I have memories of those incarnations in Egypt. We were in Egypt. I was female, and this arm didn't work. And Joan and myself were seers on behalf, not of ourselves, but of the royalty at that time. And I remember being in a temple, and it was dark, and there were troughs running along the floor. And those troughs contained water. And I didn't know what they meant for many years until I saw a program on Egypt, and there was an archaeologist talking about Egyptian temples and saying, there was a water network with troughs going through the equivalent of a cathedral, a church, a place of worship. We incarnated once as 2 Chinese fishermen, and there wasn't much in that life apart from very pleasantly fishing in a little boat and taking care of ourselves and eating the fish. And that was most of what that life was about. We were married in one life, and we had very distinct and identical memories of that life in that we were in Germany. And we could describe the house that we had, and a very nice house it was too. I don't know what's gone wrong this time round. Right down to the curtains and the furniture. And we had 3 children, and we came out on this particular day, and we had a horse and carriage. I think there were a couple of horses. And we got in, and the children got in. And to go to the town, you had to go down the side of a mountain. There was a road down the side of a mountain. And a storm broke out. And as the horse was, I was driving the horse, so you can blame me for this. As we were going down the mountain, a bolt of lightning struck ahead of the horse, or the horses. The horses reared up, and we went tumbled down the side of the mountain. And we ended up in a wooded area, and there was me and Joan and the 3 children, and we got up and dusted ourselves down, and I said, we're dead. Jane and myself have been together before. Jane came, you were a bit late, weren't you, by 6 years? Jane came to support me in this work, but also has tremendous intuition. And we are 2 halves of the same thing. So it's another point in the story of how important the Joseph communications are. Because believe me, we didn't want to come back, but we had to come back because somebody had to come back. And you think, well, why not the Persian gentleman? That's next time, I think. I think we'll sit round the pool. And Tony and myself, how long have we been working together now? 15 years?
Yeah, 15 years.
And The journey we've been on has opened itself up and shifted to a concentration on light and the World Meditation Alliance. And so all these jigsaw pieces have had to come together in order for the Joseph communications to take place and for the World Meditation Alliance to become a thing that is made available worldwide. As for the efficacy of what we're doing, I think that's reflected in what the Persian gentleman says about the intentions. He will say, for example, it is reaching people in a certain way. It will cause them to think about this aspect of their lives. It will put the brakes on in that aspect of their lives. And it's true to say, Tony, isn't it, that people come up to you and say, this has happened to me. That's happened to me.
Absolutely.
And it also always is within the parameters of what the Persian gentleman has said exactly will happen. And it's a layering of vibration. We didn't know that as we started. But the Persian gentleman brought through the first of the intentions, and we sent that out, and then the second of the intentions. But he revealed after a while that those intentions are layered. So it's not like we bring in a certain vibration and then we take it away again. We leave that vibration there, and then we mix that vibration with a further vibration. So that there's a layering of light and vibration to get through to those souls who will react at soul level to what is being made available to them. But we have to say that is without coercion. It's not something that they have to take up. If they wish to react spiritually to the vibrations that are sent out, they react spiritually. If they don't, that's also okay. We don't like it, but it's also okay. It will reach those that are ready to receive those vibrations. And as they receive those vibrations, and as they begin to change, then they reach out without saying anything or doing anything to the people around them on a material level, to other people. And they are lifted up. So slowly but surely, it is spreading. And it is lifting people up, and it is putting more light into the world. Have I missed anything, Tony?
About PG and whether other people can...
Oh, yes. Sorry, yeah. And again, this sounds arrogant, but my point in saying that Jane and myself have been together, Tony and myself are here for a purpose and are linked together, Joan and myself were linked together, is that the Persian gentleman was seen by Joan from being a child. And would talk to Joan. He used to call her Joni. So you have this great shining being who say, hello, Joni, are you all right? You know. And he was there so that she could react to him, so that I could be introduced to him on a material level, which I was. I'd never come across him before. I didn't think I had. And then could begin to communicate with him. And then it was revealed to me that he had been with me since before my birth in order for me to do this work. So, now, he has said on numerous occasions, because there have been people, and I shouldn't laugh, but they've said, oh, I've had Joseph through. And he's advising about this and about that. Well, no, he isn't, I'm afraid, because there are other setups across the world with similar spiritual work to do, but this setup is specifically tuned to our vibrations. And so Joseph only comes through to me, but not to aggrandize me, but to bring through the messages that he wants to bring through. And the Persian gentleman only comes through to me because he's on my vibration, I'm on his, and it's specific to all the work that's been put in to get us to this point. He revealed to us after we'd been together for about 6 months, he said, you're twin souls. I said, what? He said, you're twin souls. He says, you're part of the same thing. He said, you make a complete angel between yourselves. So I'm very sorry, but this is what a complete angel looks like. But again, it shows the involvement that's had to take place in order for the communications to take place. In my earlier life, I had no idea this was going to happen. None at all. And when I began working as a medium, I spent years, I suppose it was the equivalent of going to the northern clubs, really, for a stand-up comic. I spent years going to spiritualist churches all over the country. And I used to do about 120, 130 services. Where are you? No. I could only travel so far and get back because I was working at the time as well. You see, so it would only be.
So, Matt, was there no other mediums? Because I used to go to churches when I was 20, 40 years ago. I saw a trance medium first when I was about 20.
Yes.
And I used to go around all the spiritual churches, Rottenstone, Burnley, Blackburn.
Been there, done that.
Yeah. And so you'll know a lot of mediums then?
No, now I don't, because I've been working on the Joseph side for over 20 years.
Right.
And I became disappointed with not all, but with some of the spiritualist churches, because there came a point at which they said they had to read out, this is just an entertainment. And I thought, no, it isn't.
I'm not mentioning any names, but it sounds like the SNU to me.
It's,
Sounds like the
well,
SNU.
I'm not mentioning any names either. It's a long while ago that also I was frustrated in that I would go to churches year in, year out. The same people would come in, and I tried to give some philosophy, some teaching with each service, because I felt that was the most important thing. And you could see them. There was a little troop that used to follow me around, which was a bit groupie-ish for philosophies. But you could see the difference. And now we're going to move on to the clairvoyance. Yes, that's what they wanted. They wanted the clairvoyance. And they would get a message, and within 5 minutes they'd forgotten it, and they came back the next week for a message. Now, it's okay that your granddad comes through and knows that you've just painted the front door. But how does that affect the world? We're each a part of the other. How does that affect everybody else? How is that lifting things up? And that was part of the journey that took me to Joseph. That there were people in increasing amounts of light that had something really worthwhile to share with us. And beyond that, there were other levels. I've seen angels in their true form, and that is spellbinding. I've seen spirits that are so luminous, your eyes, your spiritual eyes slide off them. You can't see them. You can just see points of light in the shape of a human person, you know. So I became aware that there was more than one level, that heaven is a moving target. And heaven is available to us now if we will just change the way that we approach this world and each other. How are we doing for time? Oh, it's 10 to another.
You mentioned movers and shakers.
Yes.
And I read the fall, and I can't stop my head from thinking of movers and shakers here in this material world, you know, the rich and the powerful, the
Yes.
1% that basically, you know, they are the media, they are big pharma, and how they relate to the fall and, you know, the movers and shakers.
Yeah.
And it's
Yes.
just, and my head goes round in a spin.
Well,
Like you could just try and...
yes. Joseph mentions, doesn't he, in the fall, that the same personalities rise to the top time and again because we haven't changed the frequency. And so the instigators, and the fall originally wasn't a criminal act, it wasn't an evil act, it was a group of us as angels saying, you know, God, we've got a better way than you. We know how to create in a different way, a faster way. And the rest of the angelic host, we're talking in abstracts now, said, won't work, you know. And we said, yes, it will. Yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to apply it to this planet. It won't work. We're going to bring greater glory to God. Won't work. We're going to do it anyway. And we did it, and the light went out. We severed our connection consciously as physical beings with the divine that we're a part of. Joseph also says, getting away from the fall is simply a matter of deciding that we're not going to invest in it anymore. In saying, no, that's wrong, we're not doing that. We're walking away from it. But in the meantime, the instigators, those that said, and we followed them, again, for want of better words, we're dealing with abstracts in physicality. The instigators still believe at core that they're right. We were right. We were right then, we're right now. And as a result, that vibration attracts similar vibrations when they incarnate and drives them up to the top. And they indulge in exactly the same things they did at the time of the fall. And you can see it now. I mean, you look at people, and you say, how can you get up today and say, I'm going to harm somebody, and know you're going to do it? How can I worship money? How can I want more and more and more power? And I think, do you not realize you're not going to be here for very long? Do you think you're going to be the one that somehow cheats, that can say, I've got all this money, God, I'm not going anywhere? You know, what are you doing? Can you not see what you're doing? The thing is, they can see what they're doing. They know fully what they're doing. And they identify with, they connect with the lower thought forms that have been created since the time of the fall from our thoughts, from our desires. I mean, Joseph talks in one of the books about harnessing. He says, do demons exist? He said, yes, they do, but they're not what you think. They were actually nature spirits that were used in a particular way through ritual to get what human souls wanted. And I can give you an example. We were once called to somebody's house, and they'd had cancer. Members of the family had had cancer. There was a senior citizens' home across the way, and there was a dreadful number of people that were dying off. Now, you'd expect older people to die off, but this was above the average, well above the average. And there was something definitely wrong in the house. And we went there, and I could see that the ley lines that intersected the house had been altered. They'd been pulled in a certain direction. And we went into a garage, I think, or like a warehouse section. And there, in that warehouse, was a diva spirit, a lady, strung up, tied by tendrils of energy to all the corners of this room. And I thought, what on earth do we do? This lady has been here for, I don't know, centuries perhaps. And so I was given instruction by one of the guys from the soul group, and we joined together, we encircled her, and we prayed. And the tendrils fell away, and she sort of stood up in front of us. And it was, we were moved to tears really, because it was such a dreadful thing that had happened to this spirit. And she came to me and she put into my hands a seed. And from this seed grew this big tree. And she said, that's for the communication. And thank you. And she left. So you have an example of a nature spirit used, and we knew there'd been ritual around this spirit, used for evil, used for negativity, and had been left there because you've got to have somebody who can see to see that there is somebody stuck there, left there for perhaps hundreds of years. Now, the garage wouldn't have been there when first she was put into that predicament, but there must have been some sort of building there. So,
Is these what the Indians talk about, these diva spirit? Why they used to use them as positive, you know, for to protect things. The native Indians.
well, it's funny, we were watching something, weren't we, the other a fiction about a wolf spirit, an Indian ritual. And I looked at, there was a totem pole.
Yeah.
And it occurred to me, because I think I've spoken in here before, I know the location of, and I'm not giving it away, and I won't ever give it away. There is a stone that is in Lancashire somewhere, and I've communicated with that stone, or rather I've been privileged to allow it has communicated with me. And that stone was part of a network of stones that used to be revered and used to bring through healing and information and inspiration to the members of a village that built up around it. And it said that it linked to a network of stones across the world, similar stones. And it was a bridge between the heavens and the earth. And I looked at the totem pole and I thought, that's the same thing. I now understand what the totem pole is for, because it is another representation of that energy. So my point, going back to what I was saying, is that we have harnessed, and I'm sure it still goes on at some level, we have harnessed nature spirits, we have harnessed divas, and we have perverted that energy for our own ends. And I'm sure that there are nature spirits that have been perverted to such an extent that their vibration is now negative. and they are sitting on the backs of so many people that suppose they are in charge today. I'm not
So
going to name
At the
names.
time of the fall, there were people, let's organise the world in this way and have a better way of creation. And now you've got the elites, and it's like, let's rule the world in this way and we'll do this because it's a better form. So it's the same kind of thing, and those personalities, we're not saying who's who.
It's driven through ego.
It's driven through that subconscious desire to repeat the effects of the fall. And it's driven from the simple sentence, I was right, I still am. But I'm not naming any names here, because once we get into politics, we have individual, materially based projections as to who's right and who's wrong. What we have to look at is getting the whole thing right, and getting that sea of negativity diverted and away from us, so we can get back to this earth being what it was supposed to be. And it was supposed to be what the other planets are to the angelic visitors, and it is a playground. It is a playground of experience, but not the nasty experience we're having at the moment. It is a playground of experience so that we can take that experience back to the angelic host and say, look what I've learned. It was great down there. It's not great at the moment, is it?
When you say nasty experience, I think it's been going through my mind. Is there a temptation that, because it's talked in the books about the world is not supposed to be the way it is and there's a greater light to come, is not a temptation to sort of, once you realise that, wish your time away so you can get on and not come back and lose some of the magic that's here now? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And I think the perfect answer to that is the attitude of Joseph Soul Group. And every single member of Joseph Soul Group is in a position that they could move onwards now. They could move on to higher spheres now. They don't do so because we are their brothers and sisters, because they cannot rest, because there is, in their minds, perhaps only in the back of their minds, there is that link to us that some of our brothers and sisters are still in trouble. And because we are one unit, we can't move on until they move on.
Yeah. So it's a self-sacrifice now, but there's still magic to be had in this world.
Oh,
as it
absolutely
is.
there is.
And you want to see that whilst acknowledging it's not perfect. Does that make sense?
The more you acknowledge the magic, the more perfect it becomes, because you drive out the negativity from your own life, and therefore you become a beacon for the light, and you affect others so that they can discover magic as well.
Yeah.
For many years, to supplement my income, I put together, co-published a magazine on science fiction and fantasy modelling. And as a result, I was able to visit the film studios, Shepperton and Pinewood, and see films being made. And at the end of that period, I was very sad to give it up, but I knew there was spiritual work to do. And one of the guides came through and said, how did you enjoy that time? It was magic, wasn't it? So yes, we can have magic, and we should look for magic. And we should remember that there is magic in this life and magic in our lives. By doing so, we help to banish that which is not magic. Thank you. I think,
Yeah, I was just thinking, magic is something that you experience within, isn't it?
Yes.
It's that wow moment we talk about, that joy. But it's spotting it and recognising it and knowing it for what it is. It's not just lucky. Oh, that was lucky. And once you start looking at life like that, life changes.
During the time of bringing through Joseph, every time we brought through Joseph, the atmosphere would change. And it's indescribable, the peace and the energy and the love that came with that switch of vibration in order for the communications to take place.
Do you remember in Ireland?
Oh, yes. Over to you, Tony.
We went to, we did a road show for a while. Michael was bringing through Joseph live, which can't happen now, but it did then. And of course, I come from Wexford in Ireland, where I spent quite a bit of my life. And so we went there, and we went over in the car, and we booked in this hotel called the Talbot Hotel on the front of and that's where the do was. And we went in the room, and it was wood partitions, floor to ceiling that moved, so they could make little rooms and big rooms and things like hotels have. And we got in there, we thought, my God, we can't stay here. The energy was like nothing you could ever experience. I thought, there's no chance that Michael can work in this atmosphere. What can we do? And my idea was to get another hotel. I knew the town, so I was going to ring round and see whether we could get somewhere else where we could go. And we're in the room, and it was like a dome came down over us, wasn't it? It was absolutely
Dome of light.
dome of light.
The room itself was very dark.
It was
wasn't it?
absolutely incredible. And again, you can't put into words the actual enormity of the energy that came in, and it just shaded us for the whole evening. And then we went down for breakfast the day after. It was awful again.
Gone.
It had gone.
It is used for the purpose, and then that's it.
Yeah, but again, you could say that was lucky, but it's spotting it, and it's living in that life, knowing it, and somebody once told me the wow moments are like prayer. That's what God wants to hear. So we're getting close to lunchtime. We could take one more question if it. Rebecca. That's a cop-out, Rebecca.
It's all right.
I have a question, but I've forgotten it, so he can do it.
There is a question and answer session as part of this afternoon as well. So, but the gentleman.
We've time for one.
Actually, I thought because this lady here was actually trying to ask a question. Go, ask your question.
No, I was just saying.
Pass the question.
The energy that is being put down, the spiritual energy from the world meditation, all this energy that's coming down into the world does help the biggest way, doesn't it, to change?
Oh yes.
And also, there's an awful lot of information now coming out about what you were saying about the money that's being used by people, the banks, everything like that, you know, the
Yes.
natural health centre, everything
Yes.
that's going on.
Yes.
All this information is now beginning to come out more and more. Now, some people are going into it, and others are in a stage where, you know, they don't. So more energy that's coming down will help.
All this was predicted. The Persian gentleman said at one point, the dominoes will fall. They will start to fall. And we've seen it. And at every point he said, this will happen, that will happen. And we thought, well, it can't. But then during the period of a specific vibration, it has happened. And what we see materially, as you say, more truths have been uncovered. Things are more open now and coming to light than they were, is as a result, and I say this without arrogance, as a result of the workings of the World Meditation Alliance. It's that important. It's that important. That light is changing things here. And it's not us, it's the light that we're distributing. And the attention we're paying to specific vibrations and their purpose as they come through.
And the intention says in the first 6 months of this year, it will appear like things are dismantling and falling apart. It says exactly that.
And there's been a change. I mean, a few years ago, there was a great sadness with the soul group. And it looked as though we were heading completely into the fall again. And we had warnings from Joseph and warnings from the Persian gentleman, which is still on YouTube, saying if you don't change this, this is going to happen. You'll see things tumbling down. There is an elevated move now from that point. So we are making a difference, and we've got to continue making a difference. Because things can never change on a material level, they have to change first on a spiritual level. That's where we began, that's where we are, that's where we make the change. And then it filters down into the material level. Thank you for that question.
Can I ask a very quick question, sorry. When we live more and more from the heart mind and day to day, personally I find it quite hard to reconcile this world, this physical world, with my heart mind.
Yeah.
And I just wondered if you had any advice, or it's quite a lonely existence.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's quite challenging, but I wouldn't live any other way.
No.
But it's hard sometimes to live in this world as a spiritual being.
It is, but that is one of the consequences, if you like, of opening your spiritual eyes. It's hard for me, it's hard for Jane, it's hard for Tony, because we see the world at that moment, you see the world as it is. And the scales fall from your eyes and you think, oh my goodness, I never expected it to be like this. But in order to put things right, we have to see how things are wrong. And it is a lonely existence, except when you connect with like-minded people.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And maybe they You know, there might be 1,000 people that are not like-minded and 2 that are, but those 2 that are will make your day and make your year and make your existence worthwhile because they're on the same page. And so I suppose it's a blessing and a curse.
It is.
It's a curse because you see things as they are, but as you said quite rightly, and I feel the same way, you can't go back and you wouldn't want it any other way.
No.
Because you know the absolute truth from here. And that can't be shaken. You can't run with the herd any longer. You have to run with what your heart is telling you and what you know absolutely, not from this, but from this, to be right, to be true. And then you work as you are doing to make a difference. Thank you.
Okay, wonderful question. Oh, sir. I know you.
Does not love play an important role in what we've discussed this morning?
Absolutely. It plays a vital role.
It's, with our love for God, our love for spiritual things, we'll make sure what we manifest, we'll use it correctly.
Yes, but we're using the term light, but the term light and love, they're interchangeable. They're the same thing. So we're distributing love. It's love energy expressed as light. So everything we do is in love. When I was talking about the reason that the soul group doesn't move on, it's because they love us. They love us so much that they have to lift us out of this. We love each other in here today. I'm not afraid to say it, and we have to be able to say it. In love, we work. In love, we are one. In love, we're community and brothers and sisters. So you're absolutely right. And God is love. God, that energy is love. And that's what we are attempting, working to bring back into the world, because there is a lack of it. You know, you look at the love for power. It's the wrong love. The love for power, the love for control, the love for money. It's nothing to do with God love. God love is we are all the same thing. And it's wonderful that we're all the same thing. And it's wonderful that we can celebrate being the same thing. And that is worth no amount of money, no amount of supposed power. And that's a connection to what we are. Yes, we're love. Thank you.
It's such a powerful energy.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Spiritually speaking, it raises the roof.
Yes. Yes. And you can feel you can feel in this room the power of the love that we're generating to each other and reaching out to each other. Thank you. That was a lovely question.
Thank you. And I'm going to take control now.
Right.
I'm going to do my material bit. And thank you so much, Michael. It was so inspiring.
Thank you.
Part one.
Part
And
one.
yeah.